Turmoil spreads across the corporate galaxy as CEOs receive massive golden parachutes. Ordinary workers face the harsh reality of layoffs. Spirit Aerosystems, led by Patrick Shanahan, soars with a $28.5 million payout, while thousands of employees are grounded by job cuts. At BP, CEO Bernard Looney's $20 million exit is overshadowed by the loss of 10,000 jobs as the company shifts its focus towards renewable energy. Meanwhile, in the financial sector, Citigroup's restructuring leaves many without jobs, even as CEO Jane Fraser stands to receive a golden parachute worth $25 million. And at Boeing, David Calhoun's departure is expected to come with a $30 million payout, despite the company facing multiple rounds of layoffs due to production issues and safety concerns. The contrast between the fortunes of the few and the struggles of the many has never been more stark.
Hello and welcome back to the Unemployable Life podcast, where we discuss on-the-job news and give you unsolicited advice for dealing with difficult workplace scenarios. And the best part is you don't even have to ask for it. I am your host, Charlie, and I'm finally at an age where I remember when is no longer an ironic preface to a point. And I am joined by my co-hosts.
Hi, I'm Colin, and I do funny voices.
You did a pretty good one. This week, we discuss inflation, and we do so with a smile on our faces because we too cannot even afford to pay attention. But first, we've got some housekeeping. If you haven't already, please find us and subscribe to the Unemployable Life podcast on all of the major platforms. While you're out there doing the Lord's work, go ahead and give us a 5-star review. It's free for you. It means the world to us. And for some reason, the algorithm daddy likes it when you smash that like button like a paddle to a naughty bottom. Comment, review, rate, share. You know what? Tell us what your favorite thing about inflation is right now. And while you're doing that, ping us and pitch us a story about the last time you got a raise that actually mattered to you. Right now. Do it. I dare you. Thank you. All right. That's out of the way. So let's finish this intro. Overall, inflation is at 3.1%. It's falling, but it's still nearly triple what it was each year for the decade leading up to 2020. Goods are 21% more expensive. Housing is 47% more expensive since 2020. The cost of education has increased by 180% since 1980. And the minimum wage federally is at $7.25 per hour, and it has been for so long it can drive. Sadly, being only $7.25 per hour, it can't afford to go anywhere. And neither can we. So here we are. Colin, did you know there are actually several types of inflation?
Yeah, I never actually thought about that because honestly, just in my world, inflation has been kicking everyone's ass for so long. Inflation bad. But I also, I guess, is greedflation one of them?
As a matter of fact, you may be surprised to find it's not called greedflation, but one of them is it's called built-in inflation, and it's dubious at best. So I'll give a quick definition. This is from McKinsey Company of inflation. Inflation is the gradual loss of purchasing power reflected in a broad rise in prices for goods and services. Now, that is just really fancy talk for everything is more expensive all around you, and no one really has a good reason for it. Everyone has their own theories, and everyone has their own feelings and ickiness about it. But some of the most common are wage cost push, monetary devaluation, demand pull inflation, housing market, and built-in inflation. And the most, where to start on this one? So we'll go
so many places.
Man, seriously. So we'll start with the built-in inflation, honestly, because this one frightens me a little bit. The built-in inflation is the implication that inflation happens literally because it's expected. We've all been conditioned to expect it to rise roughly 2 to 3% every year for eternity, with no explanation really given our way. And that means they're basically just weaponizing our what is it I'm trying to say? They're basically just weaponizing our ability to expect and be conditioned to expect just to get more money. And the middle tier overall, like the lowest tier of paid employee has gone up, but the middle tier has basically stayed the same. Like if you made $20 an hour 7 years ago, you're probably still making $20 an hour now. But if you made $10 an hour 10 years ago, you're probably making $15 or $17 an hour now. And, you know, we allow inflation to happen under this built-in inflation methodology there. And I don't like that.
It's taught to us. I remember economy class always said it's just always going to be a thing. But also at the same time, these are the same classes that taught me that essentially capitalism is infinite. We can always progress. We can always make more money. There's always a bigger market. But also there were chapters about hitting your market cap.
The market cap. Do tell.
So the market cap, at least in marketing, is, let's say you're running a small business, you make around $100,000 a year, which sounds crazy to a lot of people, but that is technically what people consider a small business in the economic world. That could be life-changing money for a lot of us. Market cap is when that business starts to hit a certain point where not only is it identified as a love mark, which you might know as Target, Walmart, Macy's, Amazon, things that you just see their logo and you immediately know what it is. Another example of a love mark is you don't call it tissue paper, you call it Kleenex. That brand marketed so hard that their phrase replaced the actual colloquial word for the real product.
That's impressive.
They've hit a market cap because they are as big as they can conceivably get. And under the model of infinite growth, this would now imply that, well, they just have to find another way to make more money. They need to jump into another industry. They need to do something or another to make more money, squeeze more money out of things. Realistically, though, they're making just enough money to keep going. Actually, just enough is a kind phrase. Most of these executives have been wildly overpaid for decades, as we just covered with golden parachutes in that very thematically relevant entrance there.
Wonderful job, by the way. I was thoroughly impressed with your Clone Wars accent there. I was impressed, man. I'm proud of you. That's what I'm saying.
I tried. Maybe one day I'll give you a voice actor. Until then, we got to be unemployable.
We have to be unemployable.
We need to drink every time we say.
No. Unfortunately, I do have to work tomorrow.
That's right.
The housing market was another interesting one, although it's not as diabolical. This one actually is pretty logical. If the housing market increases, then people are essentially spending more on houses, and everything we own goes into a house. So that's kind of an indicator to the rest of the industry, the furniture industry, the construction industry, to this, to that, that they can also raise their prices because now houses are costing, well, what did we say earlier? 47% more in the last 4 years. And real quick too, in the intro, I picked before and after 2020, and I had an issue with pretty much every statistic and every price that I found before 2020, because 2019 and 2020 were a complete different decade. You might as well be comparing today to 1957. It was complete, like we're just not even in the same ballpark of inflationary inflation anymore. And you know, it just strikes me to my core when I hear people blab on repeatedly, like I am right now, obviously, about, oh, fuck, I'm losing it, Colin.
No, I got you. We're going to review annual rates of inflation real quick, because I think this is telling. What you're going over is, in the most recent years, we feel so tight and squeezed, and not in a fun, kinky way. We feel this way because everything is significantly worse than it was. The other piece to know about inflation is that it's cumulative. And often when I'm doing marketing, most people forget that things are cumulative. So if I tell someone I'm targeting 1,000 queries or 1,000 volume per month for a query, they forget that it's per month. They think, oh, it's just once a year. No, it's monthly. So in this case, I'm just going to run through 2015 to 2019. And then I'm going to run through 2020 to 2023. So 2015, 0.1% inflation. Not bad. 2016, 1.3%. 2017, 2.1%. 2018, 1.9%. 2019, 2.3%. Now we get into the interesting time frame. A lot of people talk about 2020 and say that's when the inflation really started. It's actually not. because we were all freaking out because of the plague. So 2020 had a 1.2% increase. It's in 2021 that stuff starts to go off the rails. And that is what leads us to this conversation where we're going over around 54% of Americans believe we are currently in a recession. Yet everything on the news is saying we're in a decidedly normal economy, despite the stock market jumping up and down like a giraffe drinking water. 2020, 1.2%. 2021, 4.7%. 2022, 8%.
That was a big one. Yeah,
2023, 4.1%. So let's run this real quick. We're going to add that up cumulatively. So if we add from 2010 to 2023 cumulatively, wait for it, we have had a 41.93% increase in the cost of living.
Holy
And I
shit.
fucking guarantee you, we have not seen a 41.93% increase in our pay. Because I can safely say, I've very rarely gotten a raise. Every time I go to a raise, it doesn't matter if I drove millions of dollars worth of value for companies, and I have done that. I would still, well, you know, times are tough. I know you did that work for us, but we really need you to prove yourself. I'll tell you what, I can maybe give you 2%. 2% doesn't keep up with the inflation, as we just said. We're trying to catch up to almost 42% inflation.
If minimum wage had kept up with inflation, it'd be $24 an hour right now.
Absolutely. And imagine the baseline that changes.
And it would have implications, you know, if minimum wage had kept up with inflation. You would think logically that inflation would have kept up lockstep too, that inflation would have just been that much more on top of it.
Perhaps that's the way to handle it. I'm not an economist. I can just feel the pressure of the economy. But if we had a system that basically said, okay, every time there's X amount of inflation, everyone gets paid X more. That is the law. Maybe that's a way to solidify it, but also I could see that just getting to the point where in the future we're like, I dropped $1 million on a burger. You know, like, I don't know, but the system isn't working for any of the normal people.
What if we just got rid of inflation? Hypothetically
Crazy
speaking.
concept. Yeah, in a hypothetical perfect world. Yeah.
Well, I mean, would it be perfect though? Like, what would the implications of that even be? Obviously, we're not experts or economists, but if we got rid of inflation, no goods would increase in price in any notable degree, but we also wouldn't need a notable raise in our wages either. I just don't know how that would play out in the real world, because it feels like inflation is almost inevitable just because of how humans are. Humans are materialistic creatures. We want the best. We want the next best thing. We want the next most expensive thing. And even if we reel in our spending, if we all reel in our spending, whatever I buy one of, someone else is buying two of. Whatever they're buying two of, someone else is buying four of. There's just always going to be that escalation. So there's always going to be an increase in demand in something. And I think
you're onto it. It's human nature, just as it's our nature to go to war and do horrible things to other humans, which I do personally believe we can be way better than we are cumulatively.
Infinitely.
Everyone's greedy. So the way I understood inflation when I was younger, as was explained to me by my grandfather in the middle of nowhere on a working ranch, was, well, here the cost of goods go up. So we have to match that as best as we can. You know, it's more expensive to get wood each year. It's more expensive to do this each year. We're not asking the important question of why, really, but we are accepting what other people have told us. Theoretically, as we improve technology, let's look at the advent of AI. AI should not be wiping out jobs and ruining industries as we speak. It should be liberating people from work. Theoretically, it should become increasingly easy as our society evolves to keep things at the same rate, if not make things cheaper, because we can mass produce at a higher quality than ever before. But instead, we're still eating this line of, well, everything's just going to get more expensive each year, so you have to deal with it. And that allows corporations to hide behind a veil of bullshit, as we all know that's what it is. Inflation in the grocery store. As a kid, grocery stores there was not inflation in the grocery store. I remember $50 filled a grocery cart, and I'm not that old. I'm 33. That was 15 years ago.
I remember specifically, actually, growing up, we didn't come from means. We weren't dirt floor poor or anything, but we were definitely broke. And my mom would always be like counting her money. And I remember specifically like hearing her count like 45, 47. And we walk into Aldi and we get an entire week's worth of groceries. And I'm like, okay. And I was like 7 years old. So like, I didn't know any better, but thinking back on it now, I spend basically $200 a week on groceries, and there's just two of us here. That's insanity.
120 to 140. Yeah. And we have to space it out so that when we get chicken and things like that in bulk, we make sure that we get it like once a month. That's our big run. And that's the $220 one. I placed did you ever play the game, by the way?
God damn it.
Yes.
I swear to God, 2016 was the last time I played the game. I remember it. I went 8 years, motherfucker.
Honorable Soul says, at least I didn't lose alone.
We're all just beautiful losers together. I love it.
That's why we're unemployable. But yeah, no, I think if we talk about this imaginary perfect world for a moment, which doesn't have to be imaginary, we just have to decide as a society that we're done with this bullshit. We need to work with each other.
That sounds pretty imaginary to me. Unfortunately.
With my neighbors.
Yeah, they have a nice house.
It's interesting. The interesting thing about this, though, is that inflation has been an issue throughout human history. And I want people to think about this for a moment. We're freaking out, and our human world is struggling right now. And many countries are running through the same capitalism problem, where inflation's gone up, people can't afford houses, food, et cetera, et cetera. It's not just third world nations, it's our developed nations. It means we have consistent problems. China duplicated the West so well that they have housing bubbles. They are, for the first time, seeing population decline. Yet we don't seem to pursue. Yeah, China saw its first population decline in decades this year. It doesn't seem big on the macro scale until you look at the individual small areas and realize that even the cities are starting to decline in population. South Korea is kind of going down that path right now. Japan is hemorrhaging. We're starting to have lower birth rates in the US. We're not we haven't gone below the replacing level, but what would make people have more kids? Oh, I don't know. Financial security and a place to call home.
I have always said that I don't have kids, but I'd always said before that if I were to have kids, I'd really like to have them only when I can afford them. And I remember being told, well, you'll never be able to afford them. If you wait that long, it'll be too late. Well, you're not really helping.
Yeah.
And I heard this growing up, so things were considerably cheaper back then. But when you hear things like that growing up, and I also heard a lot growing up too, you'll never retire. Social Security is going to run dry, all this. And, your generation will only ever be able to retire after 75 and this thing and that thing, because people on fixed incomes, people on retirements and pensions are actually hurt badly by inflation because they're set, you get $1,000 a month. Well, now inflation is 41% in the last however many years, what'd you say, 9-10 years?
Since 2010.
So 14 years. That's insane to me. You're not getting 41%. And I don't know how you even, I know you're supposed to plan and invest in all that stuff and do that appropriately, but it's crazy the amount of anxiety you have to have just going into retirement today, knowing what inflation has been like recently.
I would even argue, so when you invest accordingly, a 40% gain in your portfolio is pretty wild, especially over a chunk of time. Because realistically, there's going to be downturns in the market and things like that. Only certain movers do really well. And a lot of those certain movers happen to be in Congress. Fancy that.
Yeah.
It's almost like they know something before we do.
If you get a 40% gain in 14 years, I don't know. That's probably pretty good. I don't know.
It's a good rate. I mean, as soon as you don't make any mistakes, maybe you're DCA and you're just
unlikely.
Yeah, it's one of those things, though, of like, we shouldn't have to be in an environment where we have to work multiple jobs in order to survive. We all know that, yet we're stuck here anyway. The juxtaposition of executives who force return to office, who make millions because they work for 32 different companies spearheading them, yet have the audacity to terminate people with no notice when they get paid more money than they will ever spend in their lives to quit. How bad of a leader do you have to be that someone's like, Charles, I'll pay you $25 million to get out?
Promise?
Promise. All right, well, I'll see you later, man.
I already had a bag packed,
Yeah, no, I'd buy a cute little house in Japan and be like,
kind of look like you're there right now, actually.
working on it's a dream. This is inside my head. That's why I have the cute glasses. Yeah,
it makes sense. Rosy cheeks, that really brings out the cherry blossoms.
Yeah, no, this has been a problem since forever. So one anecdote I want to share is we base the American model heavily off of Rome. There's some people who deny that and they're like, no, we aren't based on Rome. But, I'm just going to point out the columns in all of our government architecture, the fact that we have a Senate, a pluribus unum. Anyway, during the Roman Empire, inflation was a constant issue. In fact, it was constantly an issue because some Roman emperors had this fabulous idea. What if we shave off the coins? The common people won't notice it, clearly. So the coins will be worth the same amount because we say it's worth the same amount. And they won't notice that we've mixed the coin with some other metal or that the coins are now slightly smaller. Spoiler alert, the elite are not different from the normal people. They noticed that it was different and it caused a devaluation, where there is a certain point where humans will look at something and go, I'm being cheated. This is not valuable. It is less valuable. I cannot trust it. Therefore, I cannot operate on it. We're kind of in that situation right now. In fact, we've got even recent stories of friends and compatriots who experienced a layoff, followed by people coming around and getting a bunch of promotions. But if you look closely, all the people getting these promotions are the ones taking on all the work from the people who were just terminated. That's a really insidious version of inflation. It is dumping off more and more work onto a smaller subset of the population, devaluing their work further. They get paid way less than those individuals were paid otherwise. It's not like, hey, 75%, let's say they all made 75K, something fun like that.
Oh God, that kind of makes my skin crawl when you put it like that, because that's not governmental or that's not like centralized inflation. That's essentially putting more work on every dollar you have to earn.
110%. What does it do to your time? It destroys it.
Oh God.
Now you don't perform, I have an excuse to terminate you and do the same thing to someone else. This is like an insidious corporate culture thing that's going on. The ultimate irony in the US, I'm getting up on a really pedantic soapbox for this one, is that,
away.
Oh man, when I wash my mouth after this one, capitalists are going to be angry. The most amazing part about the United States is that we fought an entire revolution. I had to take my glasses off for that one. We fought an entire revolution to get away from tyrants and tyranny. And then in an ironic twist, we have enabled our corporations to become hundreds of thousands of petty tyrants and lords that look over their corporate fiefdoms and treat us like we're no good. Think about how hard is it to ask for a vacation? How hard is it to use your benefits? Everything is made difficult. It's almost like they're trying to keep us latched onto a certain idea. It's no longer the fields and the farms. It's now the labor we do. And they want to devalue it. They want to say that AI can replace us. You can't replace a human. You can't.
What? Oh.
Okay. Honorable Soul calls out the use of unlimited PTO is to minimize the use of PTO. Let's take that one step further to the true insidious purpose. As an ex-manager, I could tell you my first thought was, neat, unlimited PTO, I'd love to use that. Second thought was, this is genius. They don't have to pay out your stored PTO when you quit. That's your pay.
When you see a benefit that really intrigues you, you do kind of have to wonder, like, what are they getting out of this? And the unlimited PTO thing, as best as I can tell, really only exists in the remote work realm. But
I knew a few companies that did it, but it was never one that like did factory line stuff and lots of manual because production,
That is a thing, and that's topic for another day. But one of my biggest gripes is the lack of PTO in the production world.
God, yeah. Oh, God. Let's just be clear right off the bat. 12 weeks of PTO. That should be our goal across the board.
Oh, that would be brilliant. Brilliant.
Mm-hmm. And then we also have other countries that when you have a child, you get 1 to 2 years off, both mother and father. Our country would tell you that, well, only the mother truly needs to be there because, puritanical old beliefs, the men have to go out and work and provide.
Yeah, she only got to be there for 4 weeks, though. Yeah, if they had their way about it.
Yep. Yeah. Clearly, kiddo doesn't need a father,
I mean, what are they good for anyway? All they do is go off and start wars and shit. They raise taxes, raise prices.
31 minutes in, we're on the daddy issues. We're doing great.
I wanted to circle back actually to you actually made in the earlier bit of your rant, you literally kind of said they only raise it because they wanted to. Like, you kind of inadvertently called back to it's just built in.
Mm-hmm.
Like, things are getting more expensive, but no one asks why. Well, they don't ask why is because they expect it. It's just built into their life. It's built into their expectations of life. That's wild to me. And I just want to know, like, maybe where that expectation comes from, because it has to start young. Like I was saying earlier, like I was told from day one, basically, that I was never going to retire because of inflation, because of Social Security, because of rotten politicians, because of wage stagnation and this and that. And
we just accepted it.
Well, I didn't.
Yeah, no.
I
as a community, we've
yeah.
accepted it. But as individuals, I think we're all there and don't think it's fair. It's not okay. But for some reason, we're not French enough.
Oh, they do like a good revolt, don't they?
Been doing it great since the Napoleonic era.
Oui. I do a really bad French guy.
Don't tell the missus.
And then, like, the belief in the currency too. So, like, we believe that inflation is just going to happen, and honestly, it just does. I don't know what we can do about it. It's not like we can just opt out. Like, what if
we can't leave the system?
What if we could, though?
Oh, it'd be fabulous.
What if we could?
The question is,
what if we could opt out or opt in to inflation?
What if we could opt out or opt into capitalism?
It's kind of, it's pretty adjacent, right?
Absolutely. I mean, think about this. Our ancestors, when they first evolved, were not worried about coinage. They were worried about survival. If someone told me that, okay, you have 10 acres, you just need to produce potatoes for the rest of your life, you will have everything you need otherwise. Got it. I'm going to grow the best goddamn potatoes in town. It sounds great. I'd love it. I don't want to have to worry about all of this. And yet we're not allowed to do that. And it's kind of mind-numbing. And if you try to do that, there are going to be a lot of people who are just used to the system. Like you said, we have been taught and raised this way our entire lives. So we just accept it. But as a society, we need to start questioning these moments and digging deeper and saying, like, wait, is this really how it's supposed to be? What? Why? Who made the rule? And chances are most people can't tell you.
I certainly can't. I actually, I tried to go down a rabbit hole about who controls inflation specifically. And of course, it was just the Federal Reserve. And then I got conspiracy theories about the Federal Reserve and George Soros. And then I just immediately lost interest. But I was literally trying to find, like, is there one specific believable, viable person who's controlling this? Like, is it just some guy in his basement in Manhattan? I don't even know if you have basements in Manhattan, but like, is it just some guy, or is it just a thing that is in the economy, almost like the economy is alive and can't exist without it, or won't exist without it, rather?
Yeah.
At least not the way they built it.
The thing about inflation on this topic, too, is that a lot of it comes down to how we perceive value. So if something's more scarce, it becomes more valuable, like gold. But to a degree, it might be intrinsic to our nature as humans, and it might be a sign that with all of this fabulous stuff, the internet that allows us to stream to our currently small audience, we still have our old habits. So we hoard resources, we try to gather these things up, we try to get as much as we can out of each other instead of just benefiting and helping each other. Old school Americans, there are many stories during the Great Depression about farmers banding together and basically beating the debt collectors if they tried to actually take a farm from somebody who had lost everything. I don't know if you'd see that currently. I hope you would. But I do think that the current powers that be would crack down on it and treat them as criminals and scum, even though the real question becomes, who is the true scummy human being there? Someone taking away a livelihood because someone's having a bad time? Or the person standing up to that and saying, no, let them recoup, let them keep their home, let them live, basically.
One of the most entertaining ways that I discovered in my reading on how to protect yourself against inflation, or rather, who inflation helps.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell if this article is serious or not, but I found it in a few places. Essentially, people who owe debt, if you owe debt and you pay it back while inflation is high, they're getting a dollar that is worth less than it would have been if you had paid it off at a different time. And I just found that to be like, how you really got to do some mental jujitsu to like make you feel better. But
yeah.
it's not nothing also.
Yeah. Well, and here's an interesting one. So Otter is saying in the chat, sounds like an ego issue to him. Ego convinces us we deserve and should be compensated XYZ amount for our services because they are valuable. Capitalist, wealthy, or societal structure reinforces this to an extreme, to the point of pricing most everyone out of those valuable yet necessary services. Get it's a different tack, but he thought he would share. I mean, ego can definitely drive it. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm just going to always point Musk out. Like, that dude thrives on ego. He thinks he's Iron Man. He's
Quite
maybe
literally.
Tin Man. Needs a heart. I'm proud of that one. That was a good one. But yeah, no. When you're talking about stepping out of the system and getting out of it, there's this, I think we've talked about it before in some of the recordings, but never on a live stream before, because this is round 2 with the live stream.
Round 2.
The World War I veterans, and when they came back from it, insisted on getting paid by the government that set them off to go to war, to fight for a cause that, albeit I believe many of them believed in. This is the time frame when our enemies would write about how Americans would jump into a trench with a shotgun grinning, and that an American was worth every much the same as a German. But the British and the French, 2 to 3 Americans, maybe. When they came back and asked for their pay, our government deployed the army against them. Their own army with flamethrowers and tanks and cavalry. And we burnt their tent camp to the ground because they had the audacity to ask to be paid for what they had done and putting their lives on the line. There's a break between the rest of us, the normal people, regardless of your spectrum. Red, blue, purple, green, yellow, don't care. There's a difference between us and these people at the top. And I would argue that a lot of this does come from the top. Think about these people who sit down and think about, how can I milk as much money as possible? I'm going to terminate people to make this look better for the board. I'm going to cut costs and make sure that we produce a cheaper product. What's the worst could happen? Our planes fall out of the air?
Yeah, we get astronauts stuck in space or something.
Oh, they're not stuck. They're just on an extended holiday.
Definitely.
Yeah, it's a beautiful view. They shouldn't be complaining. Best view on the planet. Well, outside of the planet.
With everything getting more expensive, do we think the quality of things has actually gone down? I found quite a few opinion pieces stating how newer cars were better, but less reliable. And the only sticking point they could say is well, yeah, it's just they're not going to go 400,000 miles anymore, but they're more comfortable, they're safer, they're better on gas, they're easier to maintain, not easier, but
that's can also be attributed to inflation if we look at it. Not to sound like Obi-Wan Kenobi here from a certain point of view.
This is why I brought it up.
There was a family that I knew. I can't go into too many details because if said family ever watches this, they are the type to come after my booty. But suffice to say, their family had invented a very specific machine that allowed a very specific processing of certain crops. And the most unique part about it was that they had gotten all of the rights to it, so they would never have to worry about competitors. Well, at a certain point, the product was so good, no one needed maintenance for them because they barely broke down. It was a great product. Yeah, they ended up financially struggling because there was no more money to be made. This was a family when I first met them. They had a private jet. Last I heard, most of that's gone. They had to change out of the family business. capitalism fears that. They want perpetual income streams. They want what everyone wants, but they're okay with hurting other people to do it. And that's the messed up part. We all just want a solid, stable life. We want to explore the world and see cool places. Or, hey, there are Hobbit people too who just want to have their little spot in the middle of nowhere. It's a cute farm. But why aren't we allowed to just do that? To your point, why can't we just do that? And I guess we are starting to see that to a degree. People have stopped purchasing from Starbucks because the CEO of Starbucks is an anti-union piece of shit.
Mm-hmm.
And now they're hiring a new CEO who is on the record for saying that unionization is a disgusting failure on the employee's part.
The new guy is?
Yep.
So they're just replacing an apple with an apple. Like, what's the point of that?
A rotten apple with a rotten apple. Because the board
you knew what I meant.
most likely, actually, okay, really fun note. You know how boards work?
No, actually.
Okay.
Yeah,
I spoke with one of these people, and I actually ended up just kind of not working with this person because the differences were so different, it was jarring. As this person explained it to me, I currently sit on 5 boards. Each one pays me about $30,000 a month, and I go to 1 meeting a month for each one. I want to make more. I need to be on at least 7, 8, 9 boards. And that's my comfort spot. And then I'll just kind of sit there and, I won't have to pay you for your marketing services anymore. And I'm sitting there going like, okay, first of all, greedy. Second of all, what value are you actually bringing? What do you do in 1 meeting that is worth $30,000 a year to just sit down there for 12 meetings a year?
$30,000 a year or a month?
$30,000 a year. Could have been worse. I'm sure there are boards that pay more.
Okay. Well, no, it was before you said a month.
Oh, sorry.
I
$30,000.
I believed it. So
$30,000 a year per business. So.
Oh, okay. I got you.
And that's the hard part. Apologies for the misspeaking there. Why can't the rest of us do that? That person is no more smart than anyone else I have known. I have known country bumpkins that have more common sense than some of these people who sit on boards. Yet for some reason, they're above us. That's not right. What?
So he was on 5 boards making 30 grand a year on each one. And all you had to do is work 5 days a week for an hour a day, basically. What do you think?
So just one meeting per company per month.
What do you think a guy like that, like, what is his morning like? Like, does he just wake up and just piss excellence?
Probably. I think it's pure gold.
Like, we're kind of losing the plot here, but like, I want to dig into this guy's morning because this guy a little bit.
Yeah, he pisses gold, drives the prices up. There you go.
Right, like we're paying this guy to live this life where he works an hour a day or an hour a week rather, for 5 different companies. And he makes 150 G's a year doing it. And that's how that's generally speaking, that's how boards work.
In general, yeah. They're supposed to be advising on what strategy to take, how the company needs to be moving, maybe some legal recommendations. Lawyers are cheaper.
And I'm sure he gets a pretty decent raise and a compensation package and all that approaches 7 figures, if not clears it. And that gets bigger every year. Well,
Stock.
Does it get 4%, maybe 4.1% bigger every year, guaranteed? Does it get maybe 8.2% bigger every year, guaranteed?
Who knows?
Is it correlated? I'm really just speculating here. Really speculating. My tinfoil
There's
hat
a
on
lot
here,
of different ways it could go, and I imagine it changes depending on the industry and what's going on. But the simple fact that this person didn't actually have expertise in the specific industries that they were in is the other part that blew my mind. It makes sense if you're a career engineer and you're sitting on an engineering board, like Boeing should have.
Yeah.
But when you don't have it, what are you advising on? Well, there's a strange culture that we have that really teaches you that if you have money, you're better than other people, and it's not true. It's your morality, it's your character. And I think that's bring this to inflation. This is what causes a lot of the problem. They think they're better. They can take more. Why shouldn't they?
And in periods of out of the ordinary levels of inflation too, companies can just price gouge. I mean, companies are getting in trouble left and right back in 2022 and 23 for that very thing, because inflation, like no one knew what direction inflation was going to go on a Wednesday. And they were just like, I don't know, I'm going to charge like 58% more for my product now. But like Arizona iced tea didn't change their price for a second. So if they can get away with it, I feel like we can find ways to opt out of inflation, because if companies, well, here's another point. If we opted out of inflation, everyone would have the same buying power. So $100 would be $100 from now until the end of time, hypothetically, to keep it clean.
Yeah.
Which means the goods that you buy would only ever cost so much, which is perfect until it isn't, because now everyone has the same opportunity and the same access to buying that same thing. So there's none of this, waiting until Billy has the same or has enough money while I can buy it, and they restock it while he's saving money. It's like, oh, everyone is going to go get it whenever it's hot. Maybe one of the costs is actually a slowdown in the supply chain. I bet the cost might actually end up in probably mandatory overtime in warehouses and in factories and in truckers. I bet it would probably end up in more work-related injuries due to fatigue and dehydration and heat and cold exposure, which means probably not noticeable, but I think notable spike or, a little tick up in like emergency room visits and stuff. So that's another impact there. I think overall, especially with the added overtime just of having to produce the things that everyone else can buy right now, would raise the wages of those people. And maybe, well, see, now we have to assume that everyone has the same access to higher and higher wages too. So now not everyone has the same buying power, because even though $100 is still $100, I have more $100 than the next guy, and that guy has more $100 than the next guy.
Yeah.
Which again, that sounds a bit cyclical or circular here, but that kind of just brings it back around to like, is inflation inevitable? And I think it is. I think it might just have to be something that we do reconcile with. And maybe it's built in simply because of human nature and less because of our expectation of it.
To your point, we either mix inflation, or alternatively, we meet inflation, like we were talking about earlier. Okay, if inflation goes up by 2%, then everyone's wages go up by 2%. That would strip out the ability of a lot of these employers to kind of take advantage of us as a people. They could still do horrible things like hack up our workloads. But as we've seen, again, with like Starbucks and some other companies, I think even Wendy's and some of the fast food restaurants I've heard are dropping their prices because they put them so high, people refuse to buy. And shockingly, the executives are like, what do you mean people won't pay $20 for a single fast food meal of limited quality? Dude, wow.
Like Wendy's tried doing that price gouging thing, the price surge thing during lunch rushes.
Yeah.
Like, how tone deaf can you be? And that is that's a prime example of acute inflation.
You don't need to warn me. Just let me know what you need.
Hello?
Dustin, can you hear us? I don't know how he's doing this.
I don't know what's happening.
Give him a boot. Give him a boot. I don't think he knows he's popping in. It's okay.
Gonna have to.
We love Dustin, but he's trying to figure it out.
I don't know what he's doing.
Next week, we're going to have to get him to chat, because he actually does have some good stuff about the topic that we can probably reveal the next week's topic, right? We don't have to hold on to that.
Yeah. If you want to ruin the entire format of the show, Colin,
let's
do it. Blow it all out of the water and just let everyone know that next week we're going to talk about how to touch CEOs and how they maybe get that way.
And then he froze.
And we're going to make a lot of speculations. What, did I freeze? No.
You froze for a second, and then it caught up. But yeah, Otter says, ooh, spoilers, and then laughs at it. We're going to talk about how to touch CEOs. Dustin has some experience with that. Actually, most of us probably do. It'd be another good one that if anyone in chat has good stories about that and you can share it in a safe way, you do not have to pop in with your face on like Dustin was doing. You can pop in cloaked. You can make a fake account for it. Like, we really want to start getting this talk show vibe going, because we can talk to each other all day, but we want to start hearing other people's stories. We know we've encountered it. We know for a fact you've encountered it too. It's kind of why you're sticking with us and watching, we presume.
And this is an opportunity for you to get your story out there and maybe connect with some people too who may have experienced something different. Maybe they feel a little isolated or a little alienated because of it. Maybe they work in an environment where they weren't able to come out about whatever mistreatment they had experienced, and you might be able to show them that they're not alone in that.
Absolutely. I mean, that's the biggest thing that we can do, and I will harp on this frequently, is we should be communicating about everything. And a fun spoiler for the folks who are in the chat, just so you know, at least in the United States, two individuals talking about compensation is a legally protected conversation. Now, if you're talking to yourself
Sure
about it,
is.
ironically enough, that is not a protected conversation. But as soon as there is more than one person, you are legally protected. And technically, it's like an anti-union busting problem if someone tries to punish you for that. We need to communicate. We need to do it constantly and thoroughly. Just be cautious, because as we know in our current environment, we don't have a lot of rights, and it's really hard to defend them when it comes to working rights. Be cautious, be smart, communicate.
Amen.
Take what you can, give nothing back.
The horse persists, but so do I.
Yep. As Honor says, it can also be tough to prove retaliation. In some cases, it definitely can. But I will tell you this, if you work for a big corporation, I guarantee you there are lawyers out there who are frothing at the bit to make money off of those corporations.
Yeah,
Do pro bono work.
that would be newsworthy. That'd be like actual newsworthy.
God, yes. I believe the oh God, what's the big union? The big union that's taking off. There's an awesome dude who's leading it. He called for the general strike in 2028. More and more groups are preparing for it. That is correct, Honor. This
don't know, actually.
podcast is not actually news. This is just pure bullshit, my friend.
Damn.
You should feel betrayed. Betrayed by the
We touch on
employers.
this. We touch it.
Yeah, did you miss the Clone Wars intro? We talked about the news, all these golden parachutes and shit, followed by layoffs. Which, Trell, you want to share your insight on that your theory there on the potential correlation between the bonuses and the layoffs?
I do. I might have to crunch a number or two because I feel like this is going to be a pretty easy statistic to find whether or not there is a correlation. But I'm curious to see if there is a correlation between the salaries of the people they had laid off and the bonuses these people had gotten, the other people had gotten. And I think a decent way to do that would just be to find out whatever their average salary is and find out what departments they laid people off from, because both of those things are fairly easy to find for places, the big, tech guys especially. And I'm curious about that.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe we'll do that for next week. So I'm curious do we think inflation could be moral? If there is any scenario where it's moral, because its very existence kind of just crushes everyone at the lower end, but it helps people at the low end or at the high end, because like we said earlier, when inflation just starts doing its thing, businesses can kind of just do their thing too, making as much money as they want. And we see this time and time again. We see this again and again in CEO salaries, even beyond the revenue streams.
Yeah.
Revenue reports.
Oh, no, either way. I mean, revenue streams just technically a marketing land refers to the different streams that come to your cumulative revenue.
It just fell out of the mouth,
It's natural. Your inner corporate kabuki side is coming out.
Ooh.
No,
You said kabuki.
I mean, I think the interesting thing, okay, what if we change our lens? Right now, inflation, the only group that uses inflation as a tool is probably the SEC, right? They are Securities and Exchange Commission. They're trying to leverage, I believe it's the SEC that is currently setting interest rates and things like that. They try to control inflation. Questionable if they're doing a good job on it right now, because they're squeezing the economy so tight that it may be having the inverse effect. If your tool is to essentially destroy the common man and woman and in between to control the overall greed and inflation caused by shitty companies, maybe take a look at your tool set. But what if we did treat inflation as a tool? Like, I can think of, I have an ecological mindset. I really wish we took better care of the planet. So realistically speaking, right now, the Atlantic currents are shifting. That could cause a mass die-off in a lot of fish that we consume that are very affordable right now. Technically, if we wanted to use inflation as a tool to protect that species, we would use it to say, okay, this now costs dramatically more in advance of it becoming rare, because we need to protect the species and make it more unobtainable to everyone. I could see inflation being used as kind of a tool in certain good ways, but it would take a very moral route,
Wow, That's really interesting, actually. I did not think of it through that lens. I like that a lot. I wish it could be implemented. I don't think it could be, unfortunately.
It relies
But
on a
almost
perfect world
using
scenario.
it as a weapon for good, very pointed weapon for good. I mean, isn't that kind of what like caviar is, though? It's a very specific type of fish egg, but it's very rare and hard to get. So it's kind of already got a scarcity to it.
Yep. And
And
then the
so
wealthy
wouldn't the scarcity? I mean, that's supply and demand right there, I guess, is really what we're just talking about when you break it down.
exactly. For some reason, humans are weird that way. The more rare it is, the more we want to covet and guard it. Like the one ring, you're like, my precious caviar.
Yeah, you know what's funny about that actually is the U.S. dollar used to be backed by gold until 1971, and they went to a fiat currency, which is literally make believe. We have a dollar that is a dollar because we believe is a dollar. It is a dollar, and that's the only reason it's a dollar. It's insanity, especially when it came from a precious metal. And one of the reasons cited as to why they did that was because of the volatility of gold. And then on the other side of that conversation, one of the most common things that I found in my reading to invest in to protect yourself against inflation was fucking gold.
So, have you heard of the petrodollar?
I've heard of it. I have not had it concisely explained to me.
So, the gold standard wasn't replaced by nothing. It was replaced by the concept of the petrodollar. I just pulled up some quick stats on it so we could get it there. So the gold standard and the Bretton Woods system. Before the petrodollar system, global currencies were largely tied to gold, as you're talking about. The Bretton Woods Agreement of 1944 established a system where many countries' currencies were pegged to the US dollar, which was convertible to gold at a fixed rate of $35 per ounce. Very stable economy set, but there are concerns that it couldn't expand. There's only a finite, what we're talking about, there's only a finite reserve of gold. This made the US dollar as good and as valuable as gold, hence it became the world's reserve currency. This is what we're currently fading out.
Cap, or the market cap, or whichever one that may be, huh?
Yeah, it was a very defensive, smart move, right? That's what made us an empire financially. By the late 1960s, the US faced significant economic challenges, including the cost of the Vietnam War, social programs leading to large trade deficit and inflation. I'm going to add an asterisk on the social programs piece. Social programs do help the economy. We know that. They just have to be handled well and appropriately and support people. Just because we have had some that have failed does not mean that we can't make a better one that will do better. Nowadays, we are smarter than our previous generations. Sorry, boomers, calling you out. In 1971, Richard Nixon suspended the dollar's convertibility into gold, effectively ending the Bretton Woods system and the gold standard. This led to a system of floating exchange rates and devaluation of the dollar. At that point, it wasn't really tied. However, following the collapse of the gold standard, the US needed a new way to maintain the dollar's global dominance. In 1973, the US struck a deal with Saudi Arabia and later the other OPEC nations to price oil exclusively in US dollars. In return, the US provided military protection and economic aid to these nations. As oil is a critical global resource, nations needed to hold US dollars to purchase oil, creating consistent global demand for our currency. This system became known as the petrodollar system. This basically reinforced it. We replaced gold with oil, is how it works out. This extended our economic and political influence to everything, the entire global economy. Without oil, without gas, we don't.
It's funny how don't mind my tin hat here, but how immediately the military industrial complex was tied into us going to the petrodollar. Like, oh, we supply military aid to these companies or these countries. Tell me the difference, right?
I mean, it's a very common thing for us.
Oh my God. It's just like it's 6 degrees of separation, it's just like 6 degrees of Lockheed.
Oh. Actually, yeah, that would be good. Can someone play that game and tell us if it works? Like, what was that Wikipedia game where it's like, I think it's like if you start on any random Wikipedia article and click 7 random links, you'll end up on the article about Jesus Christ. It was something random like that. And I remember I used to work hotels, and before I got into management, I had way too much to do. Oh God, I'd work overnight shift. You get your work done. I'd sit there on Wikipedia and be like, Jesus, what the hell?
No, you went the wrong way. It's not what the hell anymore. It's what the, for heaven's sake.
For heaven's sake. Yes. 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 Jesus Christ, I'll get it right sometime.
You can't stop this guy. Jesus.
So on a funny tangential note, my mother's an editor and she has these Post-its and they all have different things on them. It's like LOL, LMAO, WTF. She accidentally slapped a WTF Post-it note on a pastor's work and sent it out. And I guess his missus got a hold of it and was like, we're very concerned about this. What does WTF mean? Now, thankfully, I get my wit from my father. My father's in the background, overhears this and goes, with the faith. And they bought it hook, line, and sinker, and she was safe.
Just coming in with the MVP hook line, just done.
The reason she married him.
Jesus. God, what a king.
Oh,
What a king. Just stepping in like that. I love it. I thought it was interesting to think of inflation as a moral system for a business. It has to almost be in contrast with the moral system for humans, except with the caveat that most, if not all, of, let me just read this so I don't trip over it. I typed out my thoughts a minute ago. Major developments in creativity and curiosity have come from people working. So it's like, maybe in some weird way, capitalism is the way to go if we want to see the best in humanity. And inflation just has to be built into that. I keep coming back to this. Like, is it inevitable? Is it a thing that we must live with? Because I'm tired of fucking living with that. Like,
yeah.
I'm saying it, kind of repeating it, like wages haven't gone up, especially for the middle tier employee there. And
middle tier and low tier, they're just screwed. It's a game of how much shit can we push down the pipeline onto the others. And
there is like some predictability to inflation. Growing up in a small town, small farm town, no less, if it was a bumper crop, you knew that like gas prices were probably going to be pretty good because it's mixed with ethanol. But if there was not a great harvest that year, you knew that somewhere in the next year, you're probably going to see an increase in gas prices that's going to be unrelated to anything else. And then also you get the natural disasters and the wars and stuff that can easily basically like, oh, well, Israel's doing its thing again. I guess gas is going to go up 30 cents. Or, oh, well, there's a hurricane in Puerto Rico. It's going to go up another 25 cents.
As my questionably racist grandfather used to say, which is a disclaimer that I don't agree with this statement. Oh, someone farted in the Middle East and the gas prices went up. That was his statement on it. And I think that sums up, though. I mean, he was a country guy out in the middle of nowhere. He's a little rough around the edges. I don't necessarily agree with some of his opinions. I do agree with his character, though. He believed very much so at the core of it all that the system should be equitable. And I guess that's what we're coming back to. Inflation isn't a problem if the system is equitable and supports us. Because if we had a 40% increase in our wages, we would not be here right now. We would be chilling, having fun, doing our thing, planning vacations. There was an American promise that was broken, and we always come back to this too. That, look, once upon a time, we didn't care if you sat in your ivory tower because we thought we got past the era of the robber barons. But right now, we technically have more wealth inequality due to inflation, due to greedflation, due to our lack of rights than the Great Depression. And you want to make this a degree scarier? We have more wealth inequality than what caused the French Revolution.
How are we not just a complete dumpster fire yet? Like,
oh, we are. It's just that
you could argue, but we haven't completely imploded yet.
Okay, actually, I had a really interesting moment. This gentleman was working on mold in my bathroom because, oh my God, he looked up and it was like an inverted starry sky. It was just black everywhere. And I was like, God, I'm going to die. He came in, used this amazing tool. He is a great example of a classic, what I would call an old-fashioned American. He's an independent. He believes in the Constitution. He said something where it made me look at it from a different lens because he's a very respectable, upright American. He could have charged me $3,000, $4,000. And I flat out told him, my God, you could charge more. And he said, you're right, sir, but I want to be fair about this. And I jaw dropped. He said that the difference between the older generations, like his grandfather and his great-grandfather, was that they had grown up with struggles. He told his story about his grandfather being in World War II, jumping between foxholes and how he jumped through as a kid, talked to some of the kids who were in the foxhole, and run over to the next one. He had volunteered to get ammo in a crossfire situation. He came back to another foxhole, and the kid he was just talking to had lost his head. Just gone. A moment later. They dealt with some rough stuff. They didn't have access to food and water consistently because they were in a war front. They put up with a lot more horrible stuff. A lot of boomers necessarily didn't do this. This is kind of the generation that blended into what became the boomers. The boomers came after. They were the ones that came from our World War greatness, essentially. What he was saying is that a lot of people in this day and age have not actually felt the pinch. And the reason we haven't felt the pinch is that society allows me, even though I do financially struggle at times, I can still go get McDonald's, which apparently is blurred because it's a bad thing. Let me put it in front of my face. I can still go get McDonald's, which is a stupid cost. I don't need to do it, but God damn it, I wanted salty fries. We're less likely to revolt right now because the system is learned. It keeps us in a place where we have just enough to be like, actually, in the immortal words of my mother, I adore her. Well, it could be worse. If you stick your neck out, it might get cut off.
Ooh. Compliance.
That's how we get where we are.
What was it? Compliance is liberating.
Compliance is liberating.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. That is a good old-fashioned cybersecurity reference. And I remember looking at that. Oh my God, 9 years ago. And
9 years ago, back when things were affordable-ish.
Yeah. And even then, I was like, oh God, that's a scary saying.
Yeah. Nine fucking years ago, man. 9 years ago. I'm about to go on a Remember When tour. Just a real quick one. 9 years ago was what, 2015. I was making $15 an hour. I had a 2-bedroom apartment.
How much was the apartment?
$720.
No shit.
Yeah. And I had a like within 40 paces of my back door was I think like a half-acre lake.
Oh.
Yeah, it was nice. And I was like 2 blocks away from the police station, so the place was never messed with or anything. And I was within walking distance of everything.
Yeah.
And that was not that long ago, but at the same, like I was saying earlier, like it was before 2020. It's another decade ago. Actually, it is quite literally another decade ago.
Mm-hmm.
And now you look at it, not that I have to reiterate like to anyone how fucking expensive it is out there right now, because we all feel it. You're talking about feeling the pinch is what made me think of it. It's like I wasn't feeling the pinch back then, and I had a cat to take care of, kind of.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
Cat's pretty low maintenance, I guess. But
let me see if I can find this chart.
Oh, we like charts. We like charts.
Keep going. I will hunt it down, and then I'm going to see if I can share it, because it's a graph that shows income versus rent cost. And I think it's very pertinent to what we're talking about.
Perfect. Because I bitch, piss, and moan about this basically every day about how much it costs to actually rent a place here. Luckily, I don't have to rent. I own. But it is still insane to me when you have to pay $1,700 a month for like a decent 2-bedroom apartment in, you know, this immediate area. And not that long ago, it would have been probably a little more than half that. But also not that long ago, you'd have still been making the same amount of money. So you have to spend, like we said earlier, fuck, man, like 47% more on average for rent. And that's just rent. And these small business owners, a lot of them, especially in the production area, they do not get that. Like, especially at the top, it feels like if you've been at the top branches of management in a factory setting for 6 months, you might as well have been there for 10 years, because you become so out of touch with what it is to make $15 fucking an hour that you think that's actually a viable wage to offer a professional who might have 20 goddamn years experience in the field. Yeah. And to just sit back and be like, how's this treat you? And the entire offer letter is just demeaning you, and it's beating the piss out of you. It's beating your soul into the ground. You're like, I guess I have to take it because I have a bill to pay.
Yeah.
I'm going to need to work overtime to pay that.
Yeah. Okay, so I need to stand corrected on the graph. We will find a more accurate one, and maybe we can go over it next week. But it is looking like some data experts actually called out that the one line was adjusted for inflation while the other was not. That is misleading. So we don't want to actually share fake news. You know, we need to be morally appropriate about that. But let's actually take another tack on it. I'm going to pull up some information on the increase in rent versus the increase in income real quick, because we can at least go over the stats.
Where do we think that increase in rent really comes from, by the way? Like if you're, I am not a rent property owner, but I have to imagine that like your mortgage is pretty stable. Your insurance might go up, but I don't imagine it goes up enough to have to increase everyone's rent by like $200 a year, or $200 a month per every year. I mean, it doesn't take a massive leap of imagination to see where this demonized idea of the rent-seeking a landlord, it's just sort of manifested itself.
Yeah. So let's
What'd you find?
see. It lines up exactly with the inflation we were talking about. The overall increase in rent from 2010 to 2023 is estimated around 40 to 50%. Salaries have increased 28 to 30%. And that's a questionable metric. It's pulled from Property Club, which is a website that is for landowners. So, kind of keep that in mind. Again, I harken back to 54% of people believe we're in a recession right now. When more than half of your country thinks that you're in a recession, you're entering a recession. It means that we can't buy.
Oh, that's a bit of a diabolical point, actually. More than half of your country believes you're in a recession. They're not buying. That's more than half of your country not buying.
There's a great comic out there. It's this supposed to be a top of a business suite, right? And it's one guy looking out the window and being like, wages are stagnating. Soon those poor fools won't be able to afford our goods. And the other CEO sitting there playing with one of those little like balls, and he stops them and is like, wait, what? And it was titled The Moment of Clarity. That's the moment of clarity we need.
Well, we kind of talked about that a little bit, I think, a couple of weeks ago, just sort of in our one-off meetings. But that kind of reminds me of like what a world would look like if AI took everyone's jobs.
Yeah.
Where no one would be able to afford anything except the rich people, the business owners, everyone below them, whose job was replaced by AI, they would have to essentially live a free version of life because the goods that are available to purchase have now become so commoditized and like so valuable now. I imagine that because actually maybe not, because there's going to be a smaller percentage of people. Like maybe that's how we combat that's how we combat inflation, huh? We have to increase the presence of AI, and we have to eradicate everyone's jobs to eliminate the buying pool, to eliminate the demand for the supply. And that is how we deflate prices.
You're not wrong. That's like cutting off a limb to treat cancer, like gets rid of the problem. It's not necessarily an incorrect concept. I need to reread this book. It's called Ishmael. If whoever's listening, it's a really fascinating concept. It goes over how we perceive things. And just because we perceive them to be morally appropriate, well, that's just our point of view on morality. And this kind of goes into that, cutting off a cancerous limb on a tree to save the rest of the fruiting tree is a wise idea. Maybe, as we're experiencing, we all need to collectively start using our social media to coordinate to the point where we can do things like, hey, these aren't treating our fellow American citizens well. Stop buying from these businesses. And the rest of us should be lockstep and go, yeah, you know what? Trader Joe's is union busting. They're pieces of shit. We aren't going to buy from them until their leadership starts to act like morally upright leaders. We're already doing it with Starbucks, but that's just kind of luck. That's the problem. Those folks up there, they coordinate. I've been to the Bohemian Grove. I worked it. I got to meet all these insanely rich guys. Oh my God, insanely rich guys. The weird part is no women are allowed unless they're your escorts. The technical rule is no wives or girlfriends. Yeah.
That's
they didn't make me sign an NDA. Yeah. Well, and also they want to have their affairs straight up. Kids are not supposed to be there. Otherwise, girls are not supposed to be there. But you can bring your young boys who are going to kind of take over the family legacy. You want to introduce them and start to have them network with the other powerful elite so that you can make plans and stuff. I don't think there are many people consciously sitting down going, how can we help the American populace? But I do think there is the selfish human concept of our family has lots of money, therefore we are the elite. Therefore, we are better. Therefore, let's do these things to make ourselves safe, to protect us, because we deserve it. That creates the problem. But the rest of us, we aren't communicating like that. We are not working together. We are not making these connections. That's why unions are strong. We need to start making these alliances with ourselves. Tech should not be at war with production. We're an example of that. I work in tech. You work in production. We get along fucking famously. That's fine. We need to be allies and support each other so that if someone comes to fuck over the tech industry, production should be like, yo, don't mess with our brothers in tech. And if someone goes to mess with the production industry, we in tech need to get out of our fucking comfy chairs and go join your goddamn picket lines. We're the same.
There's something to be said about that gathering of minds, like you just mentioned about Bohemian Grove, which we are definitely going to get into eventually, by the way. So,
oh God, yeah, we need to do a conspiracy episode.
Yeah. We'll get around to that. And I think there is something to that because I've known union members to only ever go to union gas stations, shop at only union grocery stores, take their car to only union shops. And even if it was a big inconvenience to them, it was the purpose of supporting their union brethren in that. And unions, on average, make, I don't have the percentage in front of me, but I know it's a substantial amount higher than the non-union workers in the private sector. And
keep going, I got you.
The non-union workers in the private sector. And I'm just going to say that, like, they seem to kind of always have work. I don't see their workload diminishing. I don't see their work quality diminishing. And they're paid well. They're treated well on average. And they tend to stay for a very long time because of those things. Now, you do get the ones that abuse the system and they're union, so they can't be fired, that kind of thing. But you also get bad cops, and you get bad lawyers, and you get bad teachers and nurses. You get bad limo drivers. You get bad fishermen.
It's the exception that proves the rule.
Yeah, and it's not an excuse for their behavior, but we kind of just have to accept that is a rule because humans are flawed, and some of us just have different flaws than the others. And I think if we were to more collectively unionize, we would all make better wages. Prices of goods may go up a little bit, but the strongest the middle class had ever been was in the 50s and 60s when everyone was union, everyone was in construction and labor jobs. It was back when we had more of a labor market, like a labor dependent market where everyone had to go out and swing a hammer or fix something. And just the nature of human technological growth has kind of taken us away from that. But
it doesn't have to be. We can choose as a society to say, we like hand-built things. We want to see the quality of our worksmen. For the metrics, on average, keep in mind, this does not account for differing values and salaries and union employees in the United States earn 10 to 20% more than their non-union counterparts. On top of that, they have far more job security, which it's not quantifiable in salary terms, but like you're saying, it keeps these people safe in the job, which allows them to make more in the long run than those of us who are not unionized and can easily get terminated for, I don't know, the boss farted wrong that day.
And now gas prices are higher. Damn it.
God dang it. Full circle. I've never felt comfortable asking for a raise, even when I was in really good positions. It has always been. And like in your case, before I plant any ideas, why do you say that?
Mostly because I had a bad attitude. And I think I always subconsciously kind of knew I wasn't ready for the raise, or somehow I wasn't deserving of it. And I say "knew" with quotations and heavy italics there because I deserved more than I was getting. That is an absolute fact. But my ability to approach the bench, so to speak, for a raise was hindered by essentially my own insecurities in how I handled myself in social scenarios. It had nothing to do with my ability to do my job and my confidence in that. It had everything to do with my ability to just exist in social scenarios.
Gotcha. And so, like, I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum. I'm pretty good at social situations when it comes to that stuff, even if I'm getting fired up. But that has changed over time as I have seen it not work. Like, ex boutique hotel manager here, I can talk someone into a burning building. As Honor is saying, Honor said asking for a raise feels like a trap. It felt like that. It always feels like that to me. I'm lucky that I'm self-employed at this point in time, because every time I've asked for a raise, it doesn't matter how much money I've driven for the company. Apparently, all the companies are always just one step away from failing and drowning because we're in a good economy,
Always.
remember?
Always.
Meanwhile, in that specific example, the one I'm thinking of was the guy who said, we have an open office policy. Anytime you want to come in, Colin, you come on in with those ideas. And I was like, hey, you laid some people off because of COVID. You got your payment approved from the government. You told us that. You showed us the numbers. We're up miraculously. We're doing great. Our industry is protected. The people that you terminated are scared. Could you maybe give them a bonus in the amount of the 3 months of salary they missed, just to make them know that they're appreciated and that you want them here? Like, I'll forego it, but also, a lot of us would appreciate raises. And this was, 2020. This was not 2021 with the insane stuff going on. Like, hey, could you do something for us? Could you help us with some raises? I was treated like scum. That was the end of my job with them, candidly. That CEO hunted my ass down. Any work I did was no longer good. I went from being cherry-picked to become the director of SEO and one of the youngest ones in the country, to I skedaddled to another job as soon as possible, because they started to try and write me up for the most asinine shit. Not to get rid of me, mind you, but it was absolutely to put a thumb on me. I had that CEO call and scream at me once. And I remember at one point being like, hey, boss, I don't mean to be rude. You're raising your voice a lot. And his verbatim response was, I am not raising my voice. And I was like, okay, you just raised your voice.
I'm just reminded of that Sony ad with the guy in the chair and the tie just in the sound waves.
Yeah, no, absolutely. The missus was there. I had it on speaker, and she's just like, his voice, and I was like, oh.
A grown adult talking to another grown adult like that. Oh my God.
And the interesting part is, if it were juxtaposed, if I had done that, I'm out. I'm done.
Oh, yeah.
How dare I
100%.
raise my voice to the CEO? But Honorable says, feels like room for an employer. Let's see, feels like room for an employer to can you? Yeah, and hire someone cheaper. Can you as in get rid of you. Got it. Sorry, Honor, I'm slow. Or for them to present more work, so you chase the carrot for the raise, or just for them to be critical of your performance in unfair ways to make you, again, work harder while denying the raise. And of course, the notorious fires you but keeps you long enough to train your replacement.
I've never actually experienced that one.
It's Vasty. Vast is one of my friends. Vast is super awesome. Vast says, I don't think I'd ask for a raise without having an exit plan ready to go with the intent to leave. In case of money. Yeah, that's solid advice. Like, anyone listening to this should also do this, because, like, yeah, they'll do it.
Solid, because and if you are ready to leave, I don't know, maybe like not put one foot out the door, because a lot of times people will do that. Like they'll be ready to leave and they'll just kind of start slacking off on their work. They'll be disengaged, and then they'll go and approach their boss for a raise, and they don't.
I did start a chat. It's my fault. I'm sorry. Honor just gamed Vast in the chat. We've started a thing. I'm sorry. So actually, on that note, I want to share this little tidbit, the end of that story. So on Vast's note, I did start to prep an exit plan. And it was mostly because I was just like, I've done nothing but maintain more clients than the rest of people. I trained your new hire because your director wants to move to another department and you wanted to put me as the director. I was handpicked by that director. We all agreed this was a good thing. And now you're treating me like shit because of several, I'm not even gonna call it a misunderstanding. They understood what was going on. They were trying to get their thumb on me. They wanted someone that they could get back in the line and do your job. Get back in your hole, Colin. They wanted to do this, whether they were consciously aware of it or not. So I went out and I got another job. Now, I had been hoping for like like a 5% raise. I ended up adding 37% to my salary by moving on to another place because I had data to back that I'm good.
Oh, you went in
So I get into
prepared.
this meeting. Oh yeah, I was very prepared. And the funniest part was my director at the time, who used to like me, but I told her when this was going on of like, I know this isn't you because you don't use this verbiage. This is the CEO. And we get into this meeting, and moral of the story was COVID hit. The missus got hit by it. She was down and out. Like so hot that underneath the blankets, I could feel the heat radiating from her. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I need to call out. I need to take care of her. She's not doing good. I have a couple of calls. I can cancel these, but this one, for some reason, the CEO put on my board and he says it's a VIP, but I have no idea what I'm going into. So here are all the notes I compiled on the website. It's a pretty standard onboarding call. Hey, my Padawan that I have trained, I would appreciate if you could take this on for me. Padawan freaks out because she was scared. And I told her, hey, you got this. You're charming. You got this. She has the gall to say, like, you really need to plan these things in advance. I didn't plan for the VIP thing. That was put on my schedule without any permission. Literally at like 2 a.m., it was added to my calendar. It was not there the night before. On top of that, you don't plan to get sick. So a week later, Colin, we need to have a quick chat. And it's my director. And she's like, okay, so, I really wanted to talk to you today about some expectations in your performance and how you need to be handling call outs. And I could not hide. I was literally sitting in a meeting. I was like, hey, I hate to interrupt you, but, I have some interesting news. Would you mind if I go first? Because it might actually change the entire conversation, if you don't mind. And she just immediately puts down her notes and is like, yeah, why don't you go first? That might change everything. And I was like, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and put in my 2 weeks notice. This is make a house payment money. I'm going to go on and be an SEO manager instead of just an SEO specialist. And it is the next step up through my career. And the devastation, she never dreamed that this would happen, to the point where afterwards, and she came out of it towards the end. She was like, hey, you know what? I get it. I get it. And I hope in my heart of hearts that she understood that I was leaving because of the bullying and the peer pressure that was going on. I would have stayed with them for years because I actually enjoyed the company and the work, and I was good at that specific marketing piece. I got messages from other departments. What did you do to your director? She is devastated right now. And that happened all day.
Jeez.
Not to be a jerk about it, but the schadenfreude was real. I was sitting there like, more money in a couple weeks. I don't have to deal with your shits. Yeah, have an exit plan like Vass said.
What? I mean, could she have afforded you? Like, I assume running a small business.
So no.
No.
One of the large digital marketing agencies in the area at the time, and it was a hotspot for them. There were a few like really big ones, like Walmart level big. But to conceptualize this for you, the average package at that point in time, giggity, was $1,000 to $1,200, and then there were different tiers that would go up to around $3,000 each for this marketing campaigns. I ran 98 of those clients, run the averages. I could be paid more. I could have absolutely been paid more. And here's the thing, the company actually did transparently provide their financials every quarter. We saw how much money they were making in profit. They had 2 yachts. The
company did?
No, just the CEO. But he would invite people out, the people that he really liked.
That wasn't you.
To go out on those yacht rides. No, God. I would have said no too, because I actually don't like the water. I'm the worst Portuguese descendant you can imagine. Don't like boats. Mm-mm.
That's all they did was leave. They're just like, I don't know. Look at them massive waves. I guess I'm gonna go drive a chunk of wood into it and see what happens. Just Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
Like you can't even see that far. Like, what are you doing? What are you hoping to find out there? I understand nothing, but you have to prepare for a certain amount of time.
Yes.
You just going to go out there and hope that it takes at most 6 weeks or 6 months, or I don't know how long they were able to be out there, but it had to have been absolutely horrifying. Also, to be out there at night back then in the middle of a storm, no, absolutely not.
Dude, I'm afraid of lake water. This is totally tangential enough of inflation. We've gone wildly to the side, but like scary things in dark water make me no. No, thanks. Ponds,
No.
scary enough. Lakes, oceans, they're straight up shit that can eat me.
All the time.
Or a current. Just a current could just, you're gone.
Oh, you learn to
You'll never
notice
what
those, though. You can see those, generally.
I'm still terrified of it. All right, I've had a couple notes from chat. I would love to see if we can get one more, so just calling it out. No pressure, but if you can, toss in there, like Vast has shared, like Honor has shared. What does it feel like to try and go for a raise? In an ideal world, it should feel comfortable. And especially when we, to the point of inflation, and what you have been talking about this entire time, inflation is made to be normal. It's built in as part of it was defined. Then why is it not a standard accepted practice to match inflation at a bare minimum and then provide a raise based on merit? I know lots of companies that talk about doing that, but never actually do it.
That is, I mean, it has to be capitalistic, right? Like it has to be a bottom end kind of thing, but the money has to be going somewhere, and it's going right to the, expenditure accounts of someone, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But it has to be just inborn in the system of capitalism. I think we touched on this earlier, where it's just an innate part. It's a consequence even. It's the price we have to pay because everything costs something. It's the price we have to pay to play potentially the greatest economic game that humans have ever created in capitalism. There are other ways of governing that are different and arguably better.
While you're going, I just have the like just going in my head like the Game of Thrones, but it's the game of capitalism.
And it is, man.
Right?
Brilliant intro theme, by the way. But
I was just start doing that.
But yeah, I can't help but thinking that, I was listening to a podcast with Steve Reeves. He's a social scientist from the UK, and he was talking about the differences between companies that women run, the differences between companies that men run, and generally, broadly speaking, men tend to run more profitable companies that die sooner, that don't last as long, but women generally run less profitable companies that have better longevity. So I'm just, yeah. And I kind of believe it too, because women are more compromising, whereas men generally provide ultimatums. And
also, let's be real, the phrase "hold my beer" is primarily masculine.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. But what I'm curious about is if like there is a potential correlation between if we had more women running businesses, if this is a broad generalization here, and it is true, if maybe inflation would slow down just because the companies aren't as profitable, so they're not required by their boards or whatever to be pushing for that, extra percentage point this quarter.
I could see it. Chat, we've got it's me, Caitlin, jumping in to say, once got a promotion with no word of a raise, so I had to go out of my way to go to the CEO and ask for one. It was horrifying, and at the end of the day, I only got a $2,000 a year increase in empty promises. Real quick, I just got to do my math because, again, I ain't good at math. Divided by 12, you get an extra $166.66.
I wonder, you got to go to CEO. Jesus. And only for an extra $2,000. Like if you got to approach the C-suite for anything, I better be paid $2,000 just for having to talk to these people.
Yeah. Where's my emotional stress pay? Where's that person's emotional stress pay? Chat. Man. Vass is also chiming in. Often, if your company does do it, the merit raises are not very big compared to did the minimum. If they're really impressed with your baseline, it's fine, but not worth burning the candle at both ends over or anything. Or they may do bonuses to give you a single payment with no wage increase. I hate bonus structures. Freaking hate it. Like
I've only ever encountered one that worked successfully, and it was at DuPont of all places, the biggest corporation I've ever worked for. And their bonus structure was pretty cut and dry. Someone had to observe you doing a safe act. They reported that. You got a $25 gift card. No questions asked.
Yeah. Super efficient. You know the rules.
And all you had to do was sign it when they gave you the gift card. That's the only one I've ever seen work. I've ever heard of working even. consistently.
Yeah. The only time I had a raise really work out well was when I slightly gamed the system at a hotel I had worked at. I ended up as like the IT manager on site, being trained by an IT manager off site, also the front office manager. But I was still paid a grand total of $19 an hour to be permanently on call. And basically, I knew how to replace toilets, fix the gas fireplaces. I once burnt my eyebrows off relighting those buggers. Funniest dang thing in the world. Guest is like, fireplace ain't working. I was like, I got you.
Yeah, the longer I
Eyebrows
think about
just
it, the
gone.
more funny, the funnier that image gets. I'm just imagining like, and then like a camera side view and just a Chevy Chase just kind of shot, you know,
Oh, it made this just pop.
just
noise.
a lampoon kind of shot.
And the guests go, and I just turned around with no eyebrows and singed hair and went, anything else I can help you with tonight? And they were like,
all over.
nope, we're good. And I was like, have a good night. And just walked out like nothing happens.
Oh, you couldn't have scripted it better.
No, oh my God. No, my life has some crazy moments like that where I'm just like, all right, that happened.
Oh, yuck.
Oh God. But yeah, no, if we work on being better humans, I don't know how we hold other humans accountable to that, but we can at least start by, again, communicating with each other, sharing these stories like this. Like each one of the stories that was shared, they're related to each other. 3 people who I can pretty safely say have never actually met each other in real life, actually have probably, well, 2 of them have been in a chat room before and met each other once in person in real life.
Look at that.
But
Community building.
of the 3, yeah, hey, we're getting there. But of the 3, there's not a lot of commonality here. And all 3 of you have the similar vibe as to us 2. So we have 5 individuals with different backgrounds, different specialties, and we all feel the same pressure. That's a sign that there's something wrong with our culture. And it's probably what helps lead to this inflation piece. Because again, we can posit and dream about a perfect world as much as we want. But until we start communicating and getting this through to I have so many creative words, but I didn't mark this as an NSFW one. So the raging anal dwelling butt monkeys that are our employers in general, yeah, that was appropriate.
Delicious.
We can't hold them accountable right now. That's the break in the system. And we can't do much about inflation without basically just refusing to purchase. And that's a pretty extreme option. Because what are we going to do with groceries? Groceries are too much. We're not going to buy any. Wait a minute. We have to farm to replace that. We have to have another source of food. And right now we don't have that. That's not okay. That's why self-sufficiency is on the rise, right? That's why we got chickens. We don't want to pay the egg prices anymore. It's stupid. Although our chickens are freezing like little eggs. They're like this big.
Oh, it's not probably good, is it?
They're a little young. Hopefully, when they hit more maturity.
It's shrinkflation, man. You got to pay the same amount to feed these things, and they're giving you smaller eggs.
Hear me out. I have an idea. I'm going to cut their feed, and I think that's going to improve production in the long run because they're going to have to compete for that feed, and I think we're going to get higher quality eggs.
Yeah, the hungry dogs fight harder. That's for sure.
Very famous airline CEO said that once, and I need to find who that guy was because he's a great example of an out of touch CEO for next week's conversation.
We'll get to it.
Yeah. Chat. Okay, we've had 3 great examples. Would love to see some more. If anyone else wants to hop in and just drop, do you feel comfortable asking for a raise? If not, why? If yes, why? Because honestly, I don't think I've actually ever met anyone who said,
Honestly,
yeah.
If there was a yes, like I would be more curious to hear about that than almost more curious to hear about that. Jesus, words are fucking hard tonight, man. Almost more curious to hear about that than I would be to hear about like another negative story. We can almost use an uplifting thing. Here's something.
Oh God, I want to be proved wrong.
I know, man. I want to be wrong occasionally. I'm just usually not. It's a problem. It's a real problem.
Damn.
Here's a thought that isn't exactly cheerful, but it is potentially. But I just keep okay. If we had a non-inflatable currency, which is purely hypothetical, because the entire world would have to agree that we're not going to inflate this currency anymore. Because if it's just us, but then like something happens somewhere overseas, then there's a disruption in the world supply of goods and trade and all this. And now all of a sudden we can't compete with that because yada, yada.
Yeah.
If we continue to follow that, like, okay, without inflation, everyone would be able to live on a little bit less money, assuming that, we're talking back when money was actually kind of real, right? When it actually mattered a little bit more, when a dollar was a dollar, damn it. But people's savings would be a little fatter, which means more money would be held in the banks. More of America's health would be held up right there in the bank system. Most of it. I think we'd have to go back to actually putting money under mattresses and inside walls and stuff.
Yeah,
because
which is my retirement plan. I hope that I just knock down a wall one day and find millions of dollars in the wall.
I hope you do too. Millions. Would I know, or would you just vanish?
Yeah. Okay. Oh no, I would definitely tell you. I am not. I remember I'm a shitty capitalist. If that happens, I'm paying off my mom's debt. I'm paying off my dad's debt. I won't help out families and friends, and the rest of it I'm going to squirrel away so that I can pass this property down to kids.
One of the best ways to combat inflation is to become part of the class that kind of creates it.
Yeah.
I know the class that creates it is the buying class, but you know what I mean? Like, to become the class, the millionaire class, the elite, the financial elite.
Yeah.
Because you don't feel
and they want to make it harder for you.
You.
That's the trick. They want to make it harder for you. This is also
that's what inflation does too. It's like an artificial barrier into wealth.
Yes, exactly. And then that supports this bullshit theory that, well, if you got past that barrier, clearly you deserve to be here. Well, I mean, the old money will still give you shit. Hospitality taught me that. Difference between old money and new money, ooh, night and day. Old money wears suspenders and picks their noses. New money drives the fancy Ferraris. And yeah, I met some warlords from Africa. I've met some crazy people in my time. Golden bullet vests, like Rambo.
Belts. It's like a movie. It's like they watched a movie and they were like, "That's me now."
Yep. I don't put up with that shit. They did to my bell team, and I was like, "We're gonna have a quick chat. This is the United States. You do not snap your fingers at my team. If you need help, please politely ask, and we will assist you." I'm never going to Africa.
I wouldn't. I hear there's a lot of roadblocks. Funny enough, when I worked at DuPont, I worked with quite a few Africans, and they were from various countries, but the majority of them from Guyana. Ghana. I think Guyana's in another continent altogether. Ghana, and they were talking about how corrupt it was over there. They're like, "Oh, well, if you go over there and you look like an American, you will be robbed because the dollar over there, funny enough, is worth way more than it is here." And that actually, you know what? Do we think this is more of like just a kind of patootie little thought here, but do we think if inflation were to go and like wages were to keep up with all that and like everything were kosher and all this, that the dollar would kind of just like become a yen? It almost become a meme. Like it costs 12,000 yen to get a tea, that kind of thing. That's not a real number, obviously, but you get the point.
No, yeah. I don't know. I imagine at some point. Okay, going up on a soapbox again. Hear me out. The God of the United States is not any kind of deity in a book. It is the dollar, because we treat it as more important than human life. But the point of a dollar is it's just supposed to be an exchange mechanism so that if I make hammers for a living, but you don't need a hammer, well, I can't trade with you. But if I make hammers for a living and I sell it to the people who need it, then I get the value of the hammer back. So then I can come to you and acquire your goods, or vice versa. You can trade with me. It facilitates trade. It's why swap meets are relatively rare. That's an old-fashioned version of a market. It's just supposed to be a facilitation device that allows trade to happen at a more efficient and equitable rate. But we've turned it into something we can hoard. That's the catch. So yeah, I would think at some point it would just be kind of a joke, because if we, again, okay, I'm going to go back to this one. If we technically take all of the profit that the US makes and divide it evenly amongst everyone, socialist dream, my bleeding blue heart would be so proud of our country. Then you can charge for healthcare because, God damn it, every single individual would make just under $500,000. You get married, your family's now a millionaire. You cannot tell me that that would not mean that the economy would be great because people could afford it. Like you're saying, without inflation in a dream scenario, it's just something that facilitates it. I could build my dream LARP field because fuck it, why not?
What would it look like?
Oh, it'd be so in theme. Think like Disneyland level quality. Like you'd come around this corner and you just big old gate would open up. I'd hire people who just wanted to be, fantasy guards for funsies to check people in and act like they're interrogating you. Yeah, the Lord know that you're carrying this backpack in with you. All right, we're gonna have to inspect that for plague rats.
I'm not gonna lie, it sounds an awful lot like the Renaissance Fair.
Oh yeah, Renaissance Fair, but better quality, way better quality.
Oh, so you're just gonna go hard on the Ren Fair?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Are you gonna follow them around too? Just like post up within 30 miles of them and just do it better?
Yeah, straight up.
Why not? That's capitalism, right?
I'll just bring armies of LARPers fully equipped because I could afford to pay someone that. And then just run amok.
Just run amok in the Ren Fair. You just got overweight Midwesterners just like chawing on a big old turkey leg while they're getting lanced.
Sir, we're going to need you to leave. You're intimidating our guests. Shield ball! But no, I think to your point, yeah, if in an ideal world, it's just a modicum. It's just a piece to facilitate trade. That's all it would be in an ideal world. It's not what we have now. I don't know what it is now. It's more of a That's what I hate.
I have a piece of information here. I have to find this link though. I wanted to let's see here. Trying to make this snappy.
You're all good. We still have 11 minutes. 11
I know.
minutes.
But I needed you to see this. So this is the piece of information that I was talking about.
Honor is saying an interesting note on the costs of inflation and greed.
Damn
it. He's studying right now for an EMT course. He's prepping.
Oh, nice. Oh, yeah.
In the book is a patient perspective and testimonial. The line stands out as such. What I remember most, more than the crash or the hospital or the bills, and just the simple fact that the bills is mentioned in the text is so damning of our society when it comes to emergency medical care. Again, the dollar is more important than a human life.
Does inflation hit that? Like, does it affect medical costs? It's got to, right? But medical costs, like, there's always a demand for certain things. So I wonder if that's more like product specific, like when Ozempic became the thing that everyone was buying, that price went up, but Tylenol hasn't. Or has.
Yeah. So let me see. I'm gonna see if I can pull
I know the cost of
here.
healthcare in general has gone up, but I'm just more curious about like ambulance rides and civil services and stuff that are paid by taxes,
Yeah. So it's not exactly like a metric that we can follow, but in 1990, the total healthcare spending in the US was around $724 billion. By 2022, it's now $4.5 trillion. It absolutely is inflated. And again, it's like housing. When it becomes not something that we just need to survive, it becomes a market. That's when it becomes a problem.
Trillion?
Oh, no, sorry. I do have a metric. 274% increase since 1990 to 2023.
That's more than education. Why is no one talking about this?
Because our society is beaten black and blue emotionally. I don't know why we aren't rioting. I don't know why we aren't looking to make these changes.
I got my
yes.
Here, look at this.
Oh.
This is the CEO, and this is their benefits package per year.
That's a lot of people you could pay.
Steven Schwartzman from Blackstone, $253 million per year. That's his compensation package. He is considerably the highest paid here on this list. But the lowest paid is Tim Cook from Apple with a $99 million per year compensation package.
Okay, let's do a fun game. We're just going to look at Tim Cook, the $99 million. We're going to run some numbers here. We made $99 million per year. Let's assume the average.
When I saw this, by the way, dude, like this is what I was talking about the other day when I found this. It made a pit in my stomach and my skin just crawled. It still kind of makes like $250 million to do what, Steven Schwartzman?
No way that is $250 million worth of value. Like,
and he's in Blackstone is a private equity company, and they do a bunch of governmental security contracts and stuff too as well. What's up?
Okay, so if we assume the $99 million average, and we assume the average earning in the U.S., which is about $60,000 per year, which is still too low. Let's be honest. That's 1,650 employees that could be supported, and that's on Tim Cook's. What was the other one? Is 253 million?
253 million. Steven Schwartzman from Blackstone. 253 million, $250 million per year.
Per year. That's the scariest part. Again, exponential.
I can't fathom.
4,217 employees. That is 4,217 salaries at an average of $60,000 per year. One person does not deserve that much. Our president isn't paid that much. What the hell?
Not even close. President's paid like 400 grand a year.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm just so taken aback by that. I look at it from time to time. I have looked at it from time to time over the last week, and I'm just like, fucking Michael Rapinoe from Live Nation is on here, and I've had a beef with Live Nation for the last 2 years. Personal beef, but whatever. Just a shitty company with shitty ethics and morals for their live shows, but I digress.
Oh yeah.
Like what for that $253 million, you could invest in an entire inner city community, raise those public education establishments up to a better level, get some civil services in there, and just make it a better goddamn place to live. So much better for $250 million a year.
You know what?
This guy is just going out and pissing it away on yachts.
We're going to start doing this thing. As this starts to grow and we get more and more people involved, every single week, I'm going to put a challenge out there. If there is ever a company listening, if you're ever sitting on a board and you're listening to one of our podcasts, we're just going to keep saying this. Pay us $5 million each. We'll turn your company into a money-making profit machine by treating your employees fairly and ensuring that they know that they are cared for and valued. We will make you turn a profit, and we will make your company so valued that all you have to do is say you're hiring, and you'll have tens of thousands of applicants. All for the low price of $5 million each.
I would advise, because I know myself, to pay me after the job is done.
That's fair. No, that's absolutely fair. Half now, and then the other half upon completion of the first year.
Don't even give me $1 out of it. Give it all to me afterward. Because if I get half now, that's all I'll need. I'll fuck off, and I'll put it into certain inflation resistant investments, like I have smallest of these too.
You were ready for this.
Yeah, like some 60/40 stocks, some real estate investment trusts.
Yeah, as Honor says, turn them into the American staple of the new American dream, being treated and paid right. Well said.
That's honestly half of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, absolutely. And, kind of request to the chat. A lot of you folks are friends that I basically pinged and said, hey, can you hop in and listen? Can you support us? Let's try and get the word out as much as possible. We want this to spread. This isn't just about him and I talking about this stuff. We're here to share this stuff because we all experience it. But we want to start building this community, because this community is almost our equivalent of a union. We want the community to grow.
I was thinking about that earlier, actually, off and on. I was trying to articulate it. I've been having trouble with words tonight. I apologize for that. But
drink more tequila and pet more dogs.
Dude, I actually stopped drinking my bourbon because I thought it might have been the cause. I don't think it was. I think it was just nerves, if I'm being completely honest. But
yeah, that's fine.
we'll get there.
One day.
God damn it, where was I going with that? What were we talking about?
Turning into the American dream of being treated and paid right. The new American dream.
Being treated, paid. Oh, yes. So the union part, that's what triggered my memory of this. I was thinking earlier, actually mobilizing, like starting a Reddit movement or whatever it takes to get people who aren't union just across the nation.
Yeah.
Get them to just on the same day all go and ask for a raise.
Yeah.
Or just like walk out until you get one. You can't do that for everyone because life's hard, as we've been talking about. But it would, man, like the dream is to be able to mobilize enough people to actually make a goddamn difference around here.
Oh,
we'll work on that. Like,
ask me what we're going to talk about next week.
What are we going to talk about next week, Colin?
I don't know. I mean, how many rubber bands would it take to remake the Indiana Jones boulder?
How many would it take to remake the Indiana Jones boulder? That's like how many layers of the outsoles of my boots can I stack until I reach the moon?
How many layers of boots do you need to pull yourself up by your bootstraps?
Well, you need to buy boots first. You need money to buy boots first. I wonder how you get that money to buy the boots.
By having a good unionized job? Trick question?
Is that pulling yourself up by the bootstraps, though? What do you think they even mean when they say that? Whoever they may be, whoever's saying it.
Ooh. This is a great way that we can actually kind of wrap things up tonight. So that is based on a different piece. Humans are really good at misreading quotes. So let me see.
Put some context on me.
So we use it now as a concept of like, you should go ahead and get yourself up. But it originally started as an ironic, sarcastic expression because it's impossible to pull yourself up by your bootstraps. Over time, it turned into something else because of the misunderstanding of that, because people perceive it meant self-reliance, but it's actually saying that you physically cannot pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. It's supposed to be a sarcastic insult.
I buy that hook, line, and sinker, honestly, because it never felt right. It never felt like a thing that should have been, oh, go work harder, punk. It always felt like it didn't make sense.
Yeah.
Huh. Go figure. It's a lot like This Land Is Your Land is actually a pretty punk rock song. It's sarcastic. It's not meant to be this patriotic thing. It's actually mocking the United States. So that was the show, folks.
Moral story.
Thank you for tuning in. We thank you for participating. And if you could, remember to like, share, subscribe, comment, rate, review, all of that fun, good stuff. Find us everywhere that you can look for us at theunemployabilife.com. And next week, we'll be talking about CEOs.
How they get out of touch they are.
How they get there, how they become who they are, and the benefits and damages they stand to cause. Probably.
Damages. Damn Musk.
Have a good night, folks.